What was very different from this as well to like Bird of Dreams or Sleepwalker or Elfane was essentially this was a solo journey.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. I'm Ryan, I'm your host. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. You probably know I sent my big proj recently, so I'm still riding high from that. Although I'm fighting a little bit of a cold right now. You can probably hear it in my nose. Sometimes that happens, you know, like when you do the hardest thing or whatever it is. Maybe it's just like some really important thing at work or school or just a life event, and then you do it, and then your body's like, all right, I can let shit go for a while. So I'm fighting a little bit of a post-send cold, but it's not bringing me down. I'm super psyched, and I'm extra psyched today because you are here for a good one. We got Will Bosi. Mr. Will Bosi. Is he the most low-key crusher in the world? I mean, he's not like low-key in the traditional sense, because obviously he's out there and everybody knows who he is. But this guy just like kind of ambles up to the hardest blocks and then puts them down in short order. And we talk a lot about that in this, actually. We talk a lot about his process and his surprisingly simple training methods that he uses to get prepared for taking on the hardest boulders in the world. We had this conversation fresh off of his send of his latest V17, his fourth. What? There's even 4 V17. It's the craziest thing. His fourth V17, which was Spots of Time. I talked with Aidan Roberts on this show about Spots of Time, and now Will Bosi, who has the second ascent of that one. Will ranks his V17s in this conversation from difficult to quote-unquote easiest, but let's be honest here. There's nothing easy about these things that he's doing. But he talks about that. He talks about his nutrition game, which was a delightfully messy and relatable chapter in this conversation. And stick around to the end. Oh my gosh, Will reveals the mega proj that he might be diving into here, or that he's planning to dive into here in the next few months. An Adam Ondra line, a very, very famous Adam Ondra line, and what that might mean for his sport climbing. Because, you know, Will's not just one of the best or the best boulderers in the world. He's also a hell of a sport climber. That, in fact, used to be his primary mode of transportation from starting at the bottom and getting to the top of rocks. And he's taken a little bit of a side quest here to put down the hardest blocks in the world. But he's dusting off the harness and the rope, and we'll see what he's getting into. All that and so much more, plus a banger bonus episode. Let's just get into it right now and chalk up with one of the best in the game, Will Bosi.
Oh, only slightly late. I was stuck in really bad traffic.
Oh, not at all. Where were you coming from?
I'm up with my parents in Edinburgh, and I was dropping my dad and his friend off at a whiskey tasting, and the traffic in Edinburgh is just horrendous. So there you go.
Well, it's good to know that they're not driving, you know, doing a whiskey tasting. They're going to be stumbling around in Edinburgh.
Exactly. So yeah, on chauffeur duty. But
that's great. You know, I've never been out there, but a close friend of mine, she's an actress and a comedian, and she was just out there for Fringe, and she just said it was awesome and loved it.
Yeah, Edinburgh's amazing. I think it's definitely my favorite city. And I know I'm biased because I obviously grew up here, but I think it is really fun. The Fringe is always kind of crazy because I think it almost like doubles the population of the city during the month of the Fringe, the amount of people that come for it. So yeah, it's completely wild. That's probably a completely made up stat right there, but there's a lot of people, you know.
It's fine. We'll go with it. And how many of those people are V17 climbers? That's what I want to know.
I don't know what like Sean, I guess, is up to. I know Aidan has been on a boat, so who knows.
Nobody, the population did not double of 9A climbers out there. Well, dude, congratulations. I mean, you're fresh off of Spots of Time, your fourth V17. Absolutely bonkers, man. Congrats.
Thank you. Been like riding the high from that, but it's kind of a mix. I felt the same after I think Burn and like Sleepwalker as well, where you kind of like, I feel like amazing about it and super psyched, but I feel so tired as well. I feel like mentally just really drained after it. So I came back up because we've got a project at Dumbarton I wanted to try and do, and I had a session Wednesday. It wasn't that long a session, but didn't do it. And I was like, oh, I'll go back today, have like a short session, maybe there's a chance. I just felt absolutely terrible. It's, I've only climbed 2 days in the last week essentially, and it just, I don't know, I just feel knackered. So I think mentally I'm a lot more drained than I wanted to be.
I think that makes sense when you just pour it all out there like you do on these top end climbs. Do you get a sense that the fatigue that you're feeling is more mental than physical?
I think it's definitely, the fatigue's more mental, but like there is quite a physical side I think in my like fingers, maybe like finger health to an extent. Like I definitely feel like, because the project that I'm trying at Dumbarton in Scotland is also very crimpy, and like going back, I had, I guess, 3 full rest days after Spots of Time, where I had my first session on Wednesday on it, and that felt not too bad. But then today, going back and warming up and everything, I was like, oh, my fingers, they need a rest, I think, after crimping that hard on that boulder. So it's a mix. I think mostly I'm like body tired from is mental, but I think my hands could do with a bit of a rest.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, you put those digits through a lot, Will. Give them a little break, man. They deserve it. Well, I think we can pretty much dive right into Spots of Time since it's fresh, it's top of mind. It's what probably a lot of people who are tuning in right now want us to dive into. But before we do, I want to tease out this concept of struggle, as this is the Struggle Climbing Show. And it's interesting, Will, because, I mean, Spots was, 8 sessions, I think, in total? Is that right? So in terms of the hardest boulders in the world, that's not a whole lot of sessions. And oftentimes what we see from you when you're climbing at the top end and projecting is that you make pretty linear, pretty fast progress. You have a lot of joy in the process, it seems like. And then all of a sudden there's the send and a little post goes up on Instagram and you're moving on to the next thing. So do you struggle? What's your relationship with struggle as a rock climber, Will?
I struggle a lot for sure. I think I've got really bad skin. I think it's very like wet and soft. So I'm like, as I was talking about a little earlier, have like a, I don't know, 1 hour, 2 hour session, and like half my tips seem really bad, and then it'll take a couple of days to dry, to heal. So that's something I struggle a lot with in climbing, and maybe not so much when I was younger, but definitely now. I definitely need quite a lot of rest days, I think, thinking of it. So I definitely find it hard, and I'm definitely struggling. I mean, with some of the like harder boulder lines that I've done recently, I guess, from like, especially what's on Instagram, the progress has been quite linear with a lot of them, and I have put quite a few of them down, and I think kind of Burn of Dreams is like my longest boulder project, if you count the replica sessions, by like quite a long way, because I had 10 replica sessions and then 14 actual sessions. But after the 10 replica sessions, basically the first session I had on the real thing, it was like, oh, okay, like this actually is, I could be on red points within a session or two. Whereas I think when I've spent more time, especially in the past, on lead climbing, even currently, I struggle a lot. I get shut down on lead routes to, I think, a much maybe more consistent sort of amount than on boulders, because there's boulders I really struggle with, and I definitely take a lot more sessions than some of the ones that I've done recently. There's a project I've been trying in the Peak District at Badger Cove this summer, which I've put, I think, 14 sessions into already this year, and I have tried like at least once a year, if not twice, for like the last couple of years before, where I would like give it a session and be like, this is kind of silly and too hard, and then just leave it. Whereas this year I like properly dedicated to it. And even after all those sessions, I did have all the individual moves done, but then I broke this intermediate off, and now there's a move I've not been able to repeat that move without the intermediate. Feels close, but that's a climb I'm struggling on, where I've had like multiple days of going there and not making really any progress, or like feeling worse than the session before. And lead climbing I struggle with a lot. I find for some reason I always drop the last moves of climbs as well. That's something that I'm really good at. I don't know if that's mental or not, but I consistently on boulders and sport routes will get to the last move and pretty much always drop it at least once before the send. I guess I dropped the last move of spots of time 3 times. I dropped the last hard move of Sleepwalker or Return the Sleepwalker 4 times. Dropped the last move of Burden 3 times? 2 times. 2 times. I actually can't remember now I think about it. But yeah, I'm good at dropping last moves. That's normally my crux.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, this is going to be rich territory for us to explore as we get down into the tactics chapter and also start to explore mental game and mindset. So I'll probably put a pin in it and we'll do like a bit of a deep dive there. But I am curious, if you look back earlier in your climbing career when you were younger and maybe you were projecting your first V8 or something like that, and inevitably probably falling off and dropping the last move and having sessions where you were, not putting it together. I mean, it's all kind of scalable in a sense. Do you feel that you handle the struggles and the setbacks of that process now in a different way? Has that evolved? Has your relationship with struggle evolved since maybe take us back 5 years or 8 years or something?
Yeah, definitely. I think the earliest sort of main project I can think of, which is a good one to use for this as an example, was my first 9A route, Rain Shadow, Malham Cove. And yeah, there is a video I think that came out years ago of me on that as well, like this, that sort of showed the process. And I struggled, I guess, mentally a lot more back then. I got very angry a lot of the time falling off, a lot of shouting and swearing, and I think I found it a lot easier to focus on the negative sides of kind of being in my head maybe that I knew I could do the route, knew it was possible, and kind of believe maybe I should do the route rather than, so when I fell off I felt like I had failed more so than actually I was just a step closer to the overall goal. Whereas now I think I'm a lot more positive in my sessions, and I look at goals in very everything's, or you got the big goal, which is obviously climbing the boulder or the route at the end, but then the process to get there, every session will have very small goals. And I can even have, today I had a pretty terrible session because the climb, I was really close to sending it last 2 sessions. Last session I had a goal that was really close. A foot just popped at the end. And coming today, it was I feel like, I've got a real chance, but got there, skin actually wasn't that good and I felt tired and the conditions were pretty bad. And I kind of got nowhere close really compared to the other session. But in saying that, it was still a good session because on the individual moves, especially the last hard move of the boulder, I did it a few times at the end and it felt really good. I felt a bit stronger on it. I felt like I'd learnt the position a bit more, and it's okay, that's a positive, that's a good takeaway. Next session will be better again, hopefully from there. So it's kind of always looking for just one little positive you can take away, and I think that's now why probably a lot of the videos I post on Instagram will be me kind of psyched out my mind, be because it's one little thing's unlocked. And maybe just from bouldering a bit more that's taught me. I think in sport climbing that's maybe a bit harder to see, because sometimes you don't want to be thinking, this is going to take me 40 sessions if I'm getting excited about one individual move of the 60-meter route getting a bit easier or something. But yeah, that definitely helped in. And I think I learned some of that as well from Adam Ondra a fair bit when I was in the Czech Republic the first time, where watching him projecting what became a 9B plus route of his, he basically would have days where he just worked on the crux section or one section of the route, whether it's a lower section or higher section or the crux itself, and would do sort of laps on it, really focus on getting the feet right, learning the moves. And I've definitely fallen into the trap, I think, in the past on sport climbing, where I kind of think about going for links too early on. And I remember after that trip I came back and I did a route at Dumbarton, actually, this route Free at Last, which I gave 9A plus.
Yeah. And
I think it would have taken me many more sessions than it did if I hadn't kind of tried to use the same tactics that I just watched Adam using. And it kind of completely changed the game for me, that.
Yeah, cool. Well, I actually, coincidentally, I just had a conversation with Adam yesterday, and you came up in the conversation, so I've made some notes here to circle back on a couple things. Well, you might be able to guess a couple of things that we might be talking about. But I'm going to hold on to that.
Terra Nova, one of them maybe.
So yes, right now you're batting 1,000. That's 100% correct on one of the things that we talked about. There's one other that came up as well, but we'll keep the listeners waiting. We're gonna tease that one out. We'll loop back to Terra Nova in just a bit here, but let's focus on Spots of Time here, because this is the freshest send. It's your latest, your fourth V17 or 9A repeat. And obviously an Aidan Roberts route. It looks absolutely gorgeous, the setting of it. I had a conversation with Aidan just shortly after he had climbed that one, actually, and Arrival of the Birds. And it's a very pure looking boulder. And so I'd love for us to just kind of, maybe you could set the stage real quick, actually. Maybe for those of us who haven't been out there, we've seen some videos, but where is Spots of Time situated? What's it like to get to it? What does it look like? What does it sound like out there? Bring us to this beautiful little spot in time, and then we'll dive into the boulder.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think the way Aidan's described it in the past, and the name and everything, is pretty perfect. It's in the Lake District in England, and you park. It's on one of the really famous mountains there, Helvellyn. So you kind of park at the main tourist car park, and you follow the sort of the main path up the mountain for about half an hour, which isn't that long. It's not that far a distance, but it's actually quite a hard walk, because it's kind of that old style mountain path making where it's all been stones put into the side of the hill. So it's essentially like being on a step machine, which is but uneven steps the entire way up. So it's actually kind of brutal. Taking it slow on the way up is okay, but going down weirdly is difficult. Anyway, yeah, so you walk up this path, which admittedly, like on a weekend, is quite busy. You'll be like bumping into people quite a bit as you go. But then after about half an hour, you just dive off left and you go down into this little gorge where there's this river. And as soon as you go like 10 meters off the path and round into this gorge, it's just completely like silent and like void of other people. You won't, I never saw anyone else there, like, or any face appear in the distance or anything. You just feel completely alone. So yeah, you get to the boulder, it's got the river behind it, so the sound is basically, in general, you're just hearing the sort of flow of water, which is really nice. Does make you definitely need to pee quite a bit though, is the only problem. But, yeah. And yeah, so you're kind of up there in this gorge overlooking this like amazing view. You've got mountains on the back, a lake underneath them, and then obviously the like under the mountain and the river going down that you're on. And yeah, it's just like such a picturesque and like peaceful place. It's amazing. The only sort of disturbing noise you get, which for me was amazing, is it's like a military fighter jet training path, I think. So I think maybe out the 8 days I was there was only one day I didn't see like fighter jets going down at some point throughout the day, which was always like pretty fun to watch. So yeah, that's the boulder. And also it's just the boulder. There are like some other rocks around, like smaller ones, and like if you go higher up the hill, I think there might be a couple more, but essentially it's just one boulder and one line up the middle of it, which is Spots of Time. And it feels like so ridiculously perfect. And I can imagine for Aidan as well, living like 10-15 minute drive away, just that perfect line being there is crazy.
Wicked. Yeah, it looks absolutely picturesque and very, very pure. So yeah, let's talk about the climb itself and the boulder itself. First, before you got out to Spots of Time, to the actual boulder, what did you know about it? What was your process before you even got out there?
So I knew a little about it because Aidan had talked about it, thought I would enjoy trying it and wanted to like have some sessions with me when it was still a project. And he had showed me I can't remember if he showed me videos, but definitely pictures which showed the sort of right hand holds where you get the heel hooks. And yeah, it looked like something that would really suit me, and I was really psyched by it, but just we never ended up like having the times match up, and I never managed to go and check it out with him. Yeah, I think because I did my Red Rocks trip, so that was like the main time that when he was working it and getting close. But yeah, the climb itself I think is quite a good way to describe it. It's very similar to Burn of Dreams, but quite different as well. So it's super short. So only, I think Aidan's sequence was 5 moves. Mine was 4 moves. and so it's not that tall. Same as kind of Burn of Dreams. You can kind of feel all the holds from the ground, but they're all absolutely terrible, and it's super powerful and physical. But also, unlike a sort of standard board climb, I guess, it's very, very technical. And Bird of Dreams was technical in that you have really hard foot tension. But Spots of Time, I think, mixes it where you've got really hard foot tension, pretty weird sort of like drop knee almost moves, and then these really technical heel hooks. And the sort of mix between all of them makes it a really interesting game where it took through the first half of sessions so much learning just to be able to actually do the like correct movement to the next hold, because it's the holds don't work that you can like crimp harder and then you'll be able to like semi lock off or go slowly. You have to do quick movements between the different holds. So it's like this really technical boulder, which kind of surprised me a lot, but it was super fun to try.
What's the angle on it?
So the left face of the boulder is about 40 degrees. So it's a lot steeper than it looks. It does kind of have like wrong way around, but a slight angle change. So you look, the left-hand side where you have the left holds is about 40 degrees, and the right-hand side, I think, starts at 30 degrees and then finishes at 25 degrees on the final undercut. And because you got like a bit of compression between them, it's maybe not quite as steep as Burn of Dreams, but yeah, the left face technically is almost the same angle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That I would not have guessed 40 in looking at the video, like the way that it's, so that you can see both faces. It looks almost uniformly maybe in that like 30 degree range or 25 degree range, even like as I'm looking at the video. But then, yeah, so to hear that's quite steep for sure on the left side, similar to maybe Burden or slightly less steep, and then eases up on the right side as you kind of pull into that undercling. And well, actually, maybe I'll just play the video here and have you walk me through the moves, if that's all right. It's not going to take us long. There's 4 moves on this whole thing. So yeah, let me pull it up. But go ahead and continue to set the stage for just like the angle and the way it's situated, if you've got more there.
Yeah, so at least definitely the first left-hand hold is 40 degrees. I'm sure of that. The second one, I'm now like thinking about it, I'm not 100% sure if I can remember what I measured it as, but yeah. The video, you start quite a good right-hand hold actually. It's a slightly sloped but quite big flat edge, which isn't too bad. And then the left hand, you kind of have this rail, which is just appalling, and Aiden crimped on the top of it, which is like super impressive. I like he did a very much, we climbed it in our styles, basically. He climbed it in a more front-on way, I think, and I climbed it in a slightly more like heel hooky way, maybe, but like perfectly
you
within our.
That the first like right heel that you put up, he did that as well, didn't he? Not.
No, he did the move like that originally. That's how he was trying it. But when he sent it, he has just a right toe down and like a very bad left toe hook, like just smeared against the wall, and his left hand, instead of being on that sort of side pinch, which is honestly like appalling, the thumb's the best, but he's on top of it. Like, so I'm holding it like this, he's like this, and he's like more of a front on, just like pure power move. Whereas for me, I felt like the heel taking weight out was like absolutely crucial.
And what's your left foot on there at the start?
The left foot's okay. It's like a little edge at the bottom. It's not too bad. The right heel is terrible though.
So the right heel's terrible. You're just kind of creating some compression so that you can then bump this right hand up.
Yeah, exactly. And the right hand that you go to, again, isn't a terrible hold. It's maybe like a 15 mil, like sort of low friction, slightly in-cut edge. So the right...
That's a jug for you, dude.
Yeah, it's because it's so steep, and what makes it really hard is you don't have like a good foot out right that you can push off. So you have like these 2 okay left holds, right holds, sorry, the starting one, the one you bump to, but the left hand, all the left hand holds are just terrible. So the compression is what makes it really hard, because if you take left hand off, you just barn door straight off, like there's no way of staying on, and the feet don't really let you push across into the hand. So you're actually pulled very far over on your right hand, and it's trying to like pull as hard as you can on the really bad left, and then getting this weird drop knee, this sort of vague drop knee to then kick out of it.
In the left hand right now, the left hand that you were starting on, It's interesting in the video that actually looks like a pretty decent, like a pretty big rail there, but you're saying that's garbage. Is that slopey, or just what's the texture like?
So the top of it where the thumb is kind of flat and has quite good friction. The left side is like for your pinky and ring finger get this sort of real sloped, terrible, I don't know, 8mm sort of part of the hold. And then your index and middle finger get a bit of an edge. But again, it's like, I don't know, 6-8mm. Like it's really small and really bad hold.
Yeah.
Especially like, for instance, if conditions were bad, like I remember being there on a humid day, it was actually really hard just to pull on the wall in that position, like with the second hand hold, because the left just felt like it was doing nothing. So the left hand's actually terrible. I annoyingly didn't get a close-up film. I forgot to do that of the left hand on that to show the hold exactly. I think the one that I've got in this only shows the hold, so it's a bit hard to maybe gauge the depth. But
right.
Yeah, so the start is this sort, you're in really, to be honest, the whole boulder is a lot of compression, which is kind of surprising, because it looks more like you just grab crimps and you can like sort of just rely on your crimp strength, but it's not the case. So yeah, when you do this second move, or the way that I did the second move, where you go straight up to this left hand hold, it's not the worst edge, but it is pretty bad, this next hold. But as soon as you hear it, it feels like you actually have, if you manage to stay on it, it feels like you've got like a bit of easier compression where the holds are facing the right way. You've got a decent left foot under you. And then the third move from here is like the easiest of all the moves. That's like when you stick the second move, it feels like you've got a moment to sort of breathe almost and kind of reset. Whereas yeah, the first move and the last move, to be honest, the third and last move at the same time, you're like fully involved in max compression.
So getting this move here, that's a big move. I mean, your left hand was way low, and then you kind of throw like this left drop knee and get up and just have to dead point this left, which you get in a 3-finger drag there. I mean, I saw you drop that move many times as you were working it, and Aiden as well. It's not like it's some bomber thing. What is it that, what makes that move successful? Like, what do you need to do here to hit that dead point?
Yeah, so it's two ways. I mean, the way Aiden climbed it was quite differently. He is way more involved in the drop knee, and he comes to this absolutely appalling left hand intermediate and then bumps off that to the crimp. So he has like two smaller moves, but they're both really, really hard. It just makes it a bit more static, because the left hand that you're going to is a really, you can squeeze 4 fingers on it, but you have to hit it really well to be able to fit that. I did it in the end, like on this attempt, I hit it free, as you see in the video, and then I like bring them into the full crimp, and the pinky like wraps behind. I was really surprised it was enough to actually get through, but ideally you want 4, which is why Aiden's beta works a bit was like a bit nicer for that, because you're a bit more controlled. The edge is quite sharp, so it does, at least, unlike the right hand edge holds, you get like a bit of friction on it, which kind of can stop the dead point a bit. But yeah, the key was really having your body in the right place. You have to like use the feet in the right way and be strong enough on the right hand that like you're super pulled over it, because if you're just slightly too low or you have too much momentum, every time I just fired off that hold, like I had a lot of times where it felt like I was about to stick it, but I did the movement just slightly wrong and it just doesn't work. I'm not entirely sure what the exact key for it was, but basically you had to hit the hold kind of in the right place, either with the 4 fingers or 3 fingers super well, like I did on this attempt.
Got it. And by the way, for those listening on the podcast version of this, Will's got this video up on his YouTube, and then you can pop over to my Patreon to see as we're like doing this actual, kind of play-by-play. I've got the screen here so you can see what we're talking about. But let's continue here. Then you throw this right foot up into another heel.
Yeah, this heel is not so bad. It's like, it was quite easy to pop off. It's on you put the heel on the first right hand start hold, so it's quite a big edge for the heel, but it is quite sloping. It's not amazing, but this is for sure the easiest move. And
got it. And what's the fan on, by the way? You've got a fan on the boulder, to your right there. Which hold is that focused on?
That is focused on the second hold. So where my right hand currently is on the video, that's where so you do the first move to that hold, that's what the fan's blowing on. Because as I was saying, like they're basically like no friction edges. It's really weird because you have like the left side of the boulder super frictiony and the right hand holds are like kind of glassy. So getting like perfect conditions on that was key. I've got like some savage videos, to be fair, where I kind of like stick the second move, that big left hand move, for like half a second, and then both hands just like fire off. Yeah. And that would happen quite a lot, where the right would like fire first, just because it's, I don't know, really bad. So yeah, the fan helped a lot for that. Kind of sucked carrying it up with a big battery up the hill, but you know, got to be done. But yeah, that heel was okay. It's funny because I had to use this shoe for the first heel, because I find the shoe that I'm in is like the 510 Naiad, and it's got like a really good lip for the sort of super techie bad first heel. But actually, because it's got like the ball heel, it made this second heel a little more like, I found I had to pull a bit harder on my leg, which was a bit scary because I didn't want it to like rip, and then I would take like a bit of a fall, but it worked pretty well, to be fair. And yeah, you bump into this absolutely appalling undercut. Like undercut, this is the thing. When I saw this boulder originally, when Aidan was showing me, I was like, oh, it's all like right, like techie heels, and then like, you know, you get this undercut and you just have to do a hard move with the undercut. I was like, that sounds like perfectly my boulder. And I think it is actually pretty much like my perfect style. But that undercut shocked me at how bad it was. And it took me was it 5 days? Yeah, it was 5 days to be able to actually like use the undercut enough to do that last move just individually. Wow. Even with people like pushing me onto the wall for like power spots, I just could never, like, it felt so hard to make it work. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's not like a in-cut undercut, it's like a flat edge. So it's about compression between that and the left-hand crimp. You can't just like grab it from underneath and then pull in. Like you're pulling straight up into the wall. And yeah, it's probably somewhere around that sort of like, I don't know, 6-8 mil edge. But like for free fingers, and the pinky kind of just squeezes in there at the edge.
Yeah, well, and you have to hold it for quite some time, because you do a couple foot adjustments, and then you're setting yourself up for just like this kind of finishing jump.
Yeah, so yeah, when you can, off the heel, when you're pulling hard and the heel feels good, you can have a bit of time to hit it, wiggle your fingers a bit right, full crimp in, and then yeah, you're just like, so already you're on it for like a second or two, and then yeah, you have to do quite a tensiony footwalk, where you put your right onto an small but okay edge, left foot comes up quite high to a hold that you want to like hold a lot more tension than I was able to on, and you then just go absolutely full out and slap for the lip of the boulder. But there's two ways of doing it. Same feet, same body position, everything. Aidan did it slightly differently, where he did a slightly less powerful version, and instead of slapping the part of the lip that I got, which is quite good, he goes slightly lower to an okay part. It's nowhere near as good, but it's like there is a hold there, and it's a bit more slopey. So you do like a slightly less powerful move, but then you actually have like a much harder position to hold. And then he bumped again to where I was, whereas I did this bigger, more like dynamic move to the better part of the lip, which meant the move itself was really hard to actually do from the start, like having enough power to actually commit and do this sort of jump. But the goal where I sent and I actually managed to just hit the hold, I stayed on, which was really nice.
Quick question for you, climber friend. What's the first thing you do when you fall off of a climb? Whether you're at the gym or you're outside, you fall and you look at your hands, right? You look at your hands and you say, why have you failed me, hands? And you take a look at your skin and you say, come on, skin, can you give me one more go? Well, the answer is yes. If you are using Rhino Skin Solutions, I'm so psyched to be partnered with Rhino. I've been using Rhino forever. As a climber, it's made by climbers for your adventures. And what do I use? Well, I use their performance cream every night before I go to bed. It soothes and strengthens my skin. And then when I'm in season and I really want to keep my skin very dry so that I can keep a hold on those tiny little holds on my project, I'm going to use their dry spray. So that keeps my skin from sweating as much. And then after I get off of a climb and I'm done for the day at the gym or out at the crag, I clean my hands really well. I use their cleanse spray, which doesn't require any other water. So if I'm out in the woods, I can just clean my hands real quick out at the crag. And then I'm immediately putting that repair cream on to get my skin back to health after drying it out so much with all that chalk all day. Look, whether you climb a lot in the gym on the plastic holds or you climb a lot outside, Taking care of your skin is going to not only help you to be able to put in more quality sessions, but also it might be the difference in whether you send or not. So take care of that skin and take care of your wallet, because Rhino's going to give you 20% off just for being a Struggle listener. If you go to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/Rhino, that code will be preloaded to give you 20% off, or just use code STRUGGLE at checkout over at rhinoskinsolutions.com. Let's go. This episode is supported by PhysiVantage Nutrition, and I've been using PhysiVantage since long before there was ever even a podcast. I've been a paying customer for many years now. It tastes the best, and it does the best for me and supporting my goals in my training, my recovery, and my performance as a rock climber. I'm sure you all are familiar with their products. Their athlete team is crazy, from Alex Magos to Jonathan Segrist, Amity Worm to Daniel Woods, and so many other crushers out there are using PhysiVantage regularly. And that's because it works. I use their supercharged collagen every day before I train my fingers or I go climbing. I use their vegan Powerplex protein, which tastes incredible. The chocolate flavored protein that PhysiVantage makes is just crazy. That's like my sweet treat that I have at the end of every day. I'll either mix it up with some water or milk, or I'll mix a scoop in with my plain Greek yogurt, and it tastes like chocolate pudding. It is so, so good. And then recently, because I've been trying to build up that endurance for my long, pumpy climbs out here at the Red, I've been using a lot of their Sendurex, which is like a beetroot extract. It's highly concentrated. It is science-backed to help support the endurance system, and I'm feeling like I'm climbing longer and harder and also recovering faster when I'm using PhysiVantage products. So I think you're going to love it too. If you haven't tried it, you can get 15% off your order over at PhysiVantage.com using code STRUGGLE15. If you're looking to level up your training, your recovery, and your performance, I have really felt the difference using this stuff for the past few years, and I think you will too. Check it all out at PhysiVantage.com and use code STRUGGLE15 to get that discount. And can I just check in on your process for a second here? Because again, it's only a few moves, but just as we've seen with Burden, for example, there's like a few different ways to skin the cat. You know, a few different ways that people are finding their way through what would at a glance maybe seem like a very straightforward, hey, there's one way to climb this block. And so do you come into this with a certain beta in mind, and then you're making edits and playing around? And how does that process go? You did 8 sessions. It's not a whole lot of sessions, but it did change over the course of your time out there, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the big difference as well between, I suppose, repeating or first ascenting. I came in with already knowing the moves were possible and knowing what had been done. Admittedly, through the first couple sessions, the beta that I was trying, I knew Aidan had done the moves that way, and I assumed it was how he had sent the boulder, but he actually used slightly different beta to send than what I tried through the first 3 sessions, I think. So the last move, we were adding this like bump to an undercut. You put heel above your hand, then you came into the final undercut that we were just talking about. So it added an extra move and another hard techie heel hook. And that's the thing. There's that beta, then there's the way that I did it, the way that Aidan did it, and they're not massively different, but they're all slight variations. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, saying just how technical the boulder is. Although there's very few holes and there's very few foot options, there definitely is a lot of different micro adjustments that you can make that can change it quite a lot. Like, for instance, the last move, literally everything's the same. Left hand's the same, right hand's the same, both feet are the same, and the movement's the same, except Aidan just goes slightly lower down on the lip and I go slightly higher, and it changes the move completely.
Right.
So,
yeah, and then once you get this, it's not over, but you're nearly there, huh?
Yeah, you'd be super unlucky to fall from that position. The left hand's got like a bit of an edge on the lip, so you feel like quite locked in. And then, you just walk the feet a little, jump to this right hand, like right hand to the top of the boulder again, but where the boulder basically flattens out on the lip. And it's not like a mega jug, but it's like completely flat. Like you wouldn't come off from there, and the mantle's pretty chill.
What about the one arm hang, questioning if what just happened actually happened? You're like, for those who aren't looking at the video, Will is on the last hold with his right hand and just drops the left hand and turns to the camera and is like, what just happened, as you're just dangling here? You haven't even topped the thing out yet. My God, man, that's making me nervous just watching.
Yeah, to be honest, it makes me nervous watching it back to it. I don't know. I was just completely shocked. Like I was in disbelief at that moment. But the right hand is really good. Like you wouldn't come off from that right hand, or I mean, I'd be super bummed to come off from that hand, I suppose. But yeah, so I was just like completely shocked, and I don't know. I just
Wicked.
I don't know why, but I just turned around. It just happened.
It's so good. It's so good,
yeah,
man. Well, yeah, congratulations. It's short, it's punchy, but it's interesting. As you said, it's kind of, it seems oddly technical. Like when you reflect on the experience, how does it stack up on the other, climbs, the 9A boulders that you've done, just as the experience? We don't necessarily have to kind of compare them all and difficulty, at least at this point. I think we'll probably get into it in a bit here, but what's the experience like for you when you look back at this, your fourth 17?
I think it's very hard to say what was like a bigger experience or how it felt. This was a really sort of meaningful and cool boulder for me. Like I did have sessions up there with other people, but I think half the sessions I was by myself, and like when I sent I was by myself, and just sort of being there alone with that boulder, just in this like perfectly peaceful place, kind of removed from everything else. It's just such a nice place to be in, not such a nice experience projecting it. And yeah, it was very relaxed, whereas I guess on the other ones I was always trying it with people, and like on Sleepwalker there'd be days in Red Rocks where at that boulder there'd be like 20-30 people between like trying Sleepwalker and Wet Dream, and it would feel like quite intense, whereas this was just like completely about the climbing, the boulder in itself. There was like kind of nothing else going on, which was really nice.
Do you find it harder to tap into like full try hard mode when you don't have somebody or a few people there like giving you that support? Come on, like you might get at a day at Burden where there's a stoked crew, or Sleepwalker. I guess there could be the other side of that coin, which is like, oh, but it's distracting, or you feel nerves because people are watching you or filming you, and you might not know them. They might just be like, some people who just walked up on the block. So yeah, like compare and contrast that experience on trying hard by yourself versus with a crew.
Yeah, it is very different, both sides, I suppose. But I think from coming from the comp climbing for so many years, I don't find that I would like it affects negatively, I think, when there's a big group of people. The one thing that I found like with Sleepwalker, which was a bit weird, is when it'd be like some of the weekend days when there was like 20-30 people there, and it was super loud, lots going on, people trying on the other climb there, like good psych, everything, and then you sit down, you get ready, and you sit down on the mat about to pull on for an attempt, and it'd go completely silent. And that I found weird, because like in the comps, obviously you come out before you start the route or the boulder, and people are like cheering, there's like noise, and it's weird knowing that there was all that noise and all of a sudden it's just silent. You're like, oh okay. And then like if you just like dry fire off the second move, you're like, oh man, that was kind of embarrassing.
Right.
But yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was cool. They're just different experiences. Like I think both are quite fun and can be good. For Spots of Time, I think it was really nice the fact that it was just basically me or one other, and it was always just this sort of peaceful, quiet environment. I don't think personally I prefer one or the other. I maybe prefer being by myself, to be honest. I find it really peaceful, although it does get stressful when I'm like, I hope my phone's got like enough storage, and I like turn the camera on or something,
If the camera's not rolling, is it a send, Will?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it obviously is if you climb it, but I think I would feel like I had to do it again for the camera. That sounds maybe weird. I'm not sure that that's the case, actually. It depends what it is, but I think also, especially coming from the UK and there being like a bit of history with potential sort of sketchy business, I think it's just good if you can to film stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely keen to always try and film what I'm climbing on, even just from like watching it back and then analyzing the footage. I love doing so. Yeah, I like always trying to film attempts, even if I don't think I'm going to send and stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with the history of the UK, non-videoing scene. Is there a bit of question around some big ascents or something like that there isn't proof to support?
There was back in the day, but this is kind of pre when everyone had like a phone and you could film on. So it's all like, I guess it's more like a little before when I was into, maybe fully into climbing a little bit before. So this is like quite old stuff, but yeah, it's just always kind of, to me, I've always kind of felt it's been a good thing just to film stuff to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you didn't run out of storage. I think we've all been there, by the way. Like mid send, mid go, like the storage runs out, and you come back and you check it out, or like a dog walks by and knocks the phone out of the shoe, and it's filming the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man. Well, dude, thanks for breaking that down, and huge congrats. We're going to loop back to this because I do want to talk about Spots of Time and where it fits in with not only the other incredible climbs that you've done at the grade, but other climbs that you're working on, projecting, and climbs that may not be the grade, but, well, we'll loop back to the Adam Ondra conversation. We'll continue to put that out there. I'm sure you're getting blown up about Terra Nova right now, so I'm excited to ask. But I want to talk about training now. We'll kind of get into some of the chapters that we typically do here on The Struggle. We'll talk about training, nutrition, tactics, mental game, and we'll loop back to some of these specific ideas that we've touched on. And in training, I'm curious because you're doing a lot of incredibly hard outdoor climbing, obviously, just with these, you were saying over at the Badger Cave and you know, obviously working spots for 8 sessions. And prior to that, the other trips that you've been on, how much training kind of, and we'll just call training off the rock, off outdoor rock. So anything that you might be doing indoors, it could be climbing, could be conditioning, whatever. How much of that are you actually doing these days?
It completely depends. So on a trip, basically nothing. If I'm on a trip to try something or in full project mode, I will just be resting, trying to grow skin, and mostly just trying that climb, if weather allows. So when I was in Red Rocks, I was there for like 2 months, and I feel like, I'm not sure if I was unlucky with weather because it is technically winter there, but we had a lot of rain, and whenever it was like going to be raining for a week or so, I'd have a gym session or two where I'd like do some just sort of almost like base level, just keeping a bit of strength, so like fingerboarding, some board climbs, not pushing it too hard, but a little. So yeah, on trips or like when I'm in projecting mode, like with Spots of Time, I think in the last month I had, like all of October, I had 2 indoor sessions. That was it so far, which is kind of crazy. But when I'm not, so like over the summer, when I was I was in training mode more, or like, to be honest, most of the year so far, other than like the beginning, it's, yeah, in trying to climb like 2 days on, 1 day off, or day on, day off, depending on skin and how I feel. And that would be like indoors on board sessions, fingerboards, trying to have like, I don't know, 3 to 5 hour sort of sessions.
Would you consider the work that you did on the bird in Replica prior to going up there and getting on the block itself, would you consider that training, or is that projecting?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think when it started, it was definitely training, because I'd fingerboard to like warm up, not like a full fingerboard session, but kind of till I'm like body weight hang, like 1 arm body weight hangs, feeling good, feeling warm, and then get on the Replica, and I'd have like a 1 hour session. I think for the first couple was about all I could manage skin and finger wise, and then I'd stop there. But then the next day I'd go and I'd have a session at the schoolroom on like the board there and do like a full training session. But then maybe towards the second half, so this last 5 sessions on the burn Replica, it was like go warm up on the fingerboard, have like a 2 hour session on the burn Replica, rest the next day, and then go back to the burn Replica. So that was maybe more in the projecting side, but still, because they were quite long sessions, I think it was still probably more training, but like very, very borderline.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think kind of famously, you've done a lot of board climbing as a healthy amount of your training, it sounds like. And but if not all, certainly not all of the hard boulders that you're doing would maybe align well with that. Burden, of course, comes to mind. Spots of Time, maybe a little bit as well. But when you're talking about Return to the Sleepwalker, which you put down Sleepwalker quite quickly, and then Return took, understandably, more sessions beyond that. That didn't quite climb, or Alphane, for example, much like a board. So do you feel the stimulus that you're getting from a schoolroom session or board climbing in general then translates quite well to all types of other climbs, or are there supplementary types of training that you're working in there that then takes you like beyond what like a board climbing training session would do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always the case that doing a mix of everything is key. Like, for instance, in the past, especially when I was younger, I fingerboarded an absolute ton. And I did get back into fingerboarding this summer in a bit of prep for Spots of Time, because I knew I had to be ready on like sort of micros. But in general, like last 2 years, I've done very little fingerboard training. I used to campus board a lot when I was younger. And then last year I did quite a bit of campus boarding. This year I've not done so much. Variety's quite big. Obviously, board climbing is the one thing that stays pretty consistent that I do a lot of. But I think time on the wall is by far the most important thing. So either like just having gym sessions where you're going around trying lots of hard boulders, or when I'm not being lazy and actually doing my endurance training properly, sort of one of my favorite sessions and things to do is at the end of training, when you'll spend like 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off for like 4 sets. So you're climbing on really, like, ideally not super steep, because you should be on like really big jugs. You shouldn't be getting pumped, just like sort of slight dull ache in your forearms or something, and you just spend like 10 minutes on the wall. So it's like pure baseline endurance. And I think a mix between obviously what you're getting endurance wise from that, but almost the more important benefit, I think, for me, is the fact that you're just climbing a really long time. So you're practicing your technique. So you're working on your movement, your foot placements. You're trying to like move well, place the feet really well. You can really focus on it because you're not trying so hard in your other parts of your body. And I think it's kind of the mix between hopefully getting the strength and everything from the board climbing, but then ideally trying to train the technique to be able to move well on the climbs, which aren't obviously going to be as board like when you go outside.
Yeah. So this is after a hard session that you'll do, kind of a strength session, if you will, where it's you're doing some limit problems maybe on the board, and you do some fingerboarding to warm up and get that kind of full recruitment, if you will. And then you're like cooling down with this, or warming down with this, 10 on, 10 off?
Yeah, you could do it either way. You could do like 5 minutes on at the start of the session as part of your warm up or something, or you could do, as you say, like a cool down, like just 10 minutes on and then stop there. I would do that. That's the sort of session I would add that in on like a second session. So if I climbed one day, the next day I would do not as hard training, like in terms of board climbing, maybe a short board session, maybe some campus blocks or something, and then I'd add that in. So I wouldn't be trying to do max strength and that on the same day. But yeah, I think just climbing is like one of the most important training tools that I've been using definitely recently. So trying to have as much time actually moving as on the wall, I think.
Yeah, and this is even when you're in a very focused boulder phase. You're not doing a lot of route climbing. You're still finding benefit to doing these, like a 10-minute, very low pump session, as you're saying. It's not about like, blasting the forearms and getting pumped out of your mind or whatever. It's more about movement, submaximal climbing, and you feel that helps then to translate to really hard bouldering?
Maybe not necessarily in like it translate that you're going to feel stronger on the boulders, but I quite often have where if I haven't been doing that much and I've just been doing like hard board sessions, I'll have sessions where I'll be like, man, my footwork is just terrible today. I'm like losing my tension a lot. I'm not placing the feet well. I'm having to readjust a lot on holds, and I'm like, I feel like my technique's like dropped off a bit, and it's just basically trying to like, I think from a technical point of view it helps me a lot, and I think it's something that I would recommend, is just trying to, whether it's just like, as you say, part of your warm-up, you just go around the gym and you're like, let's pick the 10 easiest problems in the gym and just go up all of them as like extra stuff to do. Or at the end of your session, I think but focusing on trying to climb them well and trying to place the feet first time in the right place and just focusing on it, I think is important.
Yeah, cool. What do you do for recovery so you got a couple days on, you need to rest for a day? What are you doing to take care of your body or your skin so that you can get back and be ready to rock maybe the next day?
It depends on how I'm feeling, and by that I mean in like multiple ways, physically and also mentally. I think one of my absolute favorite things is ice baths, but they're really, really hard. So for me anyway, so sometimes like I'm like, I definitely should have one, like I feel broken from my training, but kind of like, especially if it's winter and you're like, and the apartment's gonna be cold, and you're like, I don't I really don't want to. So I think that's helpful, stretching a bit. And then skin wise, because I've got wet skin and not dry skin, I kind of like, I will sandpaper and like sort of file a bit, but not much, because in general what I get is more like, I don't know if I would be able to see on this, but it's more like blistery.
Yeah.
So unlike where you get like with dry skin where you have a split and you want to sand it down so that it kind of heals back together, mine's just sort of comes off in clumps almost. So mostly just resting, just trying to sit still and actually not do anything. Like I don't do other exercise. For me, I find just full rest is really important. So like I won't go running or do anything like that. Very much try and stay home if I can.
Do you do anything, because if your skin is more on the wet side, are you using any products to keep your skin dry?
Antihydral is the one I've not tried. I've never I don't know how I feel about it, so I've just never actually tried it. I feel like that would probably really help me, to be honest, but maybe for like future projects.
Yeah, I was gonna
but
say
currently, I've not tried it.
Like, what if you sprayed antihydral on your fingers, like, and then just went and climbed V18? Will, I mean, could you try it for us just to see what would happen?
We need to find some V18 projects first, to be fair. But no, I mean the main thing for me is just having good conditions. So having it either super windy or really cold, ideally both. And if it's like that, then skin's not an issue. It's just when it's warmer, it's humid, that I struggle. So in general, it's not something I've played around with different skin products or trying different things. And one of the things I was actually chatting with Tom about was like wherever I would wear rubber gloves when I'm in the shower or something to keep my skin dry. But I actually find like getting it wet helps my like skin regrow quite well. So it's not something I like pay much attention to. Something I did find I had 2 trips to Portugal this year, and I've been like in the sea for like kind of the first time in ages. I think salt water is really good for your skin. This is a random one, but I felt like it was like, it kind of like helped it like regrow because it was moist and wet. But then also with the salt, it kind of dried it out at the same time. Like my skin felt quite good out there. I was surprised.
This episode's brought to you by the Force Board. Are you into training your fingers? Dumb question. You're a climber. You're obviously obsessed with your finger strength. You're probably looking at your fingers right now as I'm saying this. And let me tell you, the Force Board is a huge step up from hangboarding. If you're not familiar with what a force gauge is, it's this little digital device that connects to your phone, and as you pull on a block or a portable hangboard, it tells you exactly the force that you are using so that you don't need to mount a hangboard, you don't need weights or pulleys to get the desired training stimulus, and you can track all of your data seamlessly and program your workouts right there in the app. And training your fingers this way, let me tell you, instead of doing weighted hangs, reduces injury risk and is just a heck of a lot faster, easier, and more consistent. I've been using one for months now. It is super portable, so I can easily bring it with me to the crag or to the gym for warm-ups. And then I'm also using it to train up my endurance right now, doing some 7-3 repeaters at 60% of my max, which is super easy to program because the app gives me that target line to hit on each and every pull. And as soon as I can't hit that target, I know my session's done. Boom. That's it. I don't get injured. I don't get overly fatigued. Hit that link in your show notes or swing on over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/forceboard to learn more about it and score yourself 10% off your purchase by using code STRUGGLE at checkout. This episode's supported by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. Oh my gosh, they make incredible stuff, you guys, okay? Chalk, apparel, accessories, chalk bags, chalk buckets. It's all there over on their website. What are my favorites? Okay, well, right now, I'm using their liquid chalk every time I go out and have a session. It's called Mag Juice, first of all. So boom, you've already got my money. But then, it works really, really well. I rub it on my palms, my fingers, and it's like my base layer. I don't then have to chalk up as much when I'm climbing, whether it's a gym session or out at the crag. Less time chalking up means more time actually climbing and hopefully landing moves and not punting off my project. And then the apparel's fantastic. I've got all their super soft sweatshirts and their tees are amazing. But my absolute favorite, I think you guys know this, are their harness pants. They are stretchy, they are durable, they are attractive. I love the cut, I love the feel. They are the best dang pants in the game. And right now you can get 15% off pretty much everything over at Rungni by using code STRUGGLE. And then you can add that on top of their free shipping bundles. So especially if you're listening in the US where you would get hit with shipping, they're giving you free shipping with their free shipping bundles, and you can add code STRUGGLE on top of that. Hit that link in your show notes to stock up on chalk, to get those threads that you've been wanting for your climbing and your lounging, and use code STRUGGLE for 15% off. talk about nutrition for a minute and food, fuel, what your tips and tricks are there, or just what your routine is in order to, not only fuel up for like a hard day of climbing, but maybe also to recover. And I'll start where I always start, which is with struggle. So do you struggle anywhere in the world of nutrition?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm pretty terrible at food, I think. Like my breakfast throughout all of school and then for quite a few years after was just always like a packet of plain oatcakes or oatcakes with Parmesan cheese. And I don't know, for people that don't know what oatcakes are, they're essentially like porridge oats, like sort of muesli, but it's like baked together into sort of a like cracker or cookie. So they taste essentially like cardboard. They're terrible. But yeah, I just able to eat a plain packet for school every day, which is I don't know. It worked, but
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's bad for you. It just sounds really boring.
Yeah, it really is. It means you drink a lot of water in the morning though, because they're so dry, which
right.
I suppose get the hydration. But yeah, I eat a lot of Parmesan, I'd say. That's what I think the superfood is.
Yeah, I feel like I heard a conversation between you and Stefano about like Parmesan or cheese, Italian cheeses at some point in time.
Yeah, probably. It's 33% protein, so as long as you eat enough of it, you can't go too wrong. Yeah. Just don't look at the rest of the rest of the nutrition facts on it. But yeah, so in general, I don't really have big breakfast or lunch. I'll have like a small breakfast normally in the morning, and then some snacks throughout the day, like whether it's some biscuits or something, but nothing that big, and kind of ride it out for like a late lunch, early dinner. So in general, I'll climb quite early, or I'll have training sessions. I wake up, eat a bit for breakfast, go have the sessions, then come home and I'll have like a late lunch, early dinner, in which I'll make enough that I'll like then have seconds later on in the evening. So normally about like 4 p.m. or something, I'll have like a lot of food, and then seconds again at like 8 or 10, somewhere in that range. So like with trying spots of time, weirdly I got into the ritual of waking up relatively early because it's like a 3.5 hour drive, and then I wouldn't have anything for breakfast, but I'd drive and I'd stop an hour and a half of the way in at a service station, and I'd get like a packet of pancakes. They're so good, and then like some shortbread and stuff like that. So it definitely wasn't maybe the healthiest breakfast, but I don't know, I had good sessions on it, so it went pretty well.
Yeah, dude, I love this, man. This is a very different conversation than like one that I would have with Dave McLeod. It's the other side of the spectrum here, and it's kind of refreshing. Stopping at a gas station, grabbing some pancakes or some donuts, and then just going and climbing the absolute hardest rigs in the world.
On Saturday, the day that I sent spots of time, the shop didn't have any pancakes at the service station. I was actually super bummed, so I ended up getting some pizza, which I don't know if that's actually better or worse, to be honest. But yeah, well,
I think it's better. I mean, you got your carbs, you got your protein, maybe little vegetables with the sauce there. I think you're better off with pizza than pancakes, maybe. So pizza for breakfast, and then
maybe
garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Whereas like for Sleepwalker, I was having rice in the morning pretty much every day, like a sort of pretty big bowl of rice, which is probably a lot smarter and better breakfast. But
dude, yeah. I mean, you have a pretty boring diet, I gotta say. I mean, it's the oat cakes and a bowl of rice. What about like I don't know, when you're doing the dinners, because that's kind of, it sounds like your recovery meal. You like to keep it light in the morning and the early afternoon when you're like training or you're climbing hard, and then, you're really fueling up. So what do those look like?
Yeah, they're quite different. I mean, they're very varied. It kind of depends what we're feeling, I suppose. But in general, I'll have quite a lot of red meat throughout the week. I pretty much every dinner sort of main meal that I make will have like either meat or fish or something in it, or if it's pasta and it'll have a lot of Parmesan cheese on it. So yeah, I focus on trying to get like quite a lot, I think, of protein and like nutrients. Veg I definitely struggle with. I don't put enough veg on food. That's something I'm definitely bad with. But yeah, no, like quite often I'll make, like if I'm making like a pasta dish, I'll make a lot of pasta with it, so that if I'm hungry later on, there's still like lots of food to go and have. Yeah, and the sort of dinner is for sure my main meal.
Yeah. Well, a tip that I'll throw your way, something that we do a lot of at our family. We're vegetarians, so we're always looking for like other sneaky ways to get protein into the diet. And so we make a lot of pasta. And I don't know if they have it where you're at, but out here we've got a couple brands that make lentil pasta, and it tastes amazing. It's just pasta, but it's like super high protein. Oh no, you can't do it.
I've had lentil pasta. I don't like it. Or no, it's not that I don't like it, but in comparison to normal pasta, I don't know. For me, I struggle.
Okay. Well, at least you tried it. Yeah, for me, it's got like a really good umami. All right. Well, then pizza for breakfast, and it's working for you. It's working. What about caffeine? My last question here, kind of on this chapter. Do you use caffeine when you're tucking into like a hardcore session?
No. I don't drink coffee. I quite rarely drink tea, normally only if I'm feeling ill. To be fair, don't anymore. I used to like keep an energy drink in the car in case I was like super tired driving. I always like to have like a backup. But no, I don't drink energy drinks or coffee or anything like that. So no, I try not to use caffeine.
Yeah, fueled on pancakes and Stoke. I like it, Will. Yeah, and let's shift here. Let's talk about tactics. And this is an interesting area. I'm curious to kind of juxtapose some bouldering and some sport climbing here, and just tactically how you like to break down a project. I got a bunch of questions in from listeners. Kyle was one that wrote in, and he said, I'm curious on Will's projecting process that allows him to keep making progress session after session. And you do seem to do that. And maybe we can look at it through the lens of bouldering as well as sport climbing. So tactically, how do you like to take on a project?
So I think the absolute key is just having really small achievable goals. And even on top of that, being able to, like something that I definitely try and do a lot, like I think we touched on a bit earlier, is taking positives away from even the sessions you don't achieve the goals. For instance, the session that I posted a vlog of session 5 on my YouTube.
Yeah.
And that was like kind of the breakthrough session for me on Spots of Time, where it really just like unraveled itself a bit and became super positive. And from that session, like on the walk down or even packing up, I was thinking already ahead, and I had like mapped out in my head. I had like a 5-session plan in my head for the next 5 sessions, and I was like, the next session was to be, I wanted to drop the last move. I think I wanted to slap the hold but not stay on. So it's like, and then the session after was ideally do the move but stay on the hold, and it's like one goal but hopefully very achievable that you can kind of keep working through and towards. And obviously if you're on a project that's you're more into the double digits, you're up to like 20 sessions or something, you probably want to keep the goals a lot smaller, whether it's literally just, I felt like I moved slightly better to that hold today. Like even if you didn't, like you're just touching it or you're like not quite getting it, you've like, I got like a little closer, or just looking for any sort of micro goal that I think you can always take a positive away from a session. There's pretty much always, it's quite rare when sessions nothing happens, if you know what I mean, and you walk away going, that was terrible, unless you get there the conditions are just appalling or something. But there's normally something little you can work on, even if it's not what you set out to do. When you get there and you're like, actually I just don't feel good on the section I wanted to link today, maybe it's worth looking, even if it's just like the top out of a boulder or like the easy jug climbing last 2 clips of a route, but you know what, let's just go up, work that a little bit, make sure I actually know what my sequence is and it feels super chill, so that it's something that I just don't need to worry about in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think always just looking for small achievable goals.
And will you create a list for these, like prior to starting a project, whether it's a boulder sport route at your limit or maybe just underneath or something? Are you trying to map out specifically for that project what you want to achieve?
I wouldn't have said before I try a project. I might have an idea in mind where I'm like, this, it should be this grade. I feel like I should be able to go and do all the moves this session, or like on the first session or something. Like you kind of have like ideas in your head that would be really nice to achieve, but in general I wouldn't set goals really before trying something, unless it's like a boulder that I'm like, I really want to flash this boulder. Then obviously you're going there to flash it and you're going to be a bit bummed if you don't, I suppose.
Right.
But no, in general it's like first session is just complete, always just looking for the sort of exploration session where you just see what's going on and whatever come away from is positive, because you've obviously probably worked out something, even if it's that the climb's really hard and you need to train a bit more or something.
Sure.
But
then wrapping up, like, so from session to session, you might wrap up a session and say, well, today I slapped that hold. Next session out, I want to try to control it. And so you're setting these next achievable goals just based on how that current session went.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of redo the goals every session. But for like spots of time where I had the goal was to pull on, do moves 3 and fall on move 4. And then the like next session I managed, like that was the goal for this, what I was thinking. And then that next session I actually managed to go from the start and fall on the last move. And I was like, well, I technically achieved the goal I wanted to, but I actually did it from like way lower down. So that's kind of like pushing ahead. But then I kind of always, I don't write the down in general, but I kind of remember what I've got in my head. And then you think when you have the next session and it doesn't go so well, like it was the case in this session 7 was quite, I don't know, I was tired, skin was bad, it was humid, wasn't really a great session for me. But there were some takeaways even in that session. I was like, oh, you know what, I felt a bit better on that section, that move. But even if that didn't happen, I could look back and be like, well, actually, when I was doing my original plan, I'm still ahead of where I wanted to be. So it's still all progress and it's time on the wall and training. So it all helps in the end.
Does that translate to sport routes as well, just in terms of process? But of course, you're talking about maybe bolts or links rather than just single moves.
Yeah, definitely. I think I imagine I should be on that level of detail. I think on Excalibur, the Stefanos route that I'm trying in Arco is 9B plus, which is pretty short. It's like kind of power endurance, 18 moves long. It's a lot more to the boulder style where you're like, oh, you know what, that move actually is like feeling better. That's like really positive. Whereas, yeah, trying a longer sport route, you definitely kind of want to be thinking, oh, I want to be getting to this hold, not feeling quite as pumped. And it can be quite a different process, and well, not different process, different goals, but the process I think is quite similar in that you always just want to keep it small and quite achievable. I think quite a good example actually, when I was trying the Burn the Dreams replica, I remember like going there and it would be like an amazing session if I like put it on the first move, if I like hit the second, like to begin with it was like, oh, if I can just get my fingers to the edge, that would be a good session. And I remember having like the day where I got my fingers to the edge, like absolutely no hope of staying on it or actually like engaging in. But I was like, oh, that was insane. That was crazy progress. And the next day I remember I got my fingers on it and they engaged, like not to the point I took much weight or anything, but for like a half second it was like on the hold. I was like, wow. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, the difference between that or then trying sport routes it's quite big. Sport routes, you're definitely like, oh yeah, I really want to link this extra like 3 moves on from the last time or something. But I think it can be quite similar in the way if you're, again, on a project that's going a long way. Like when I was trying Mutation, Steve McClure's route at Ravenstor, and it took me like 40 sessions or something. And that definitely was like, oh, you know what? I felt like I was able to like take a little longer on the rest, like just an extra second or two in the shake. I think like that's definitely progress. So I think it can be kind of as nuanced on the sport as well. It just depends how deep into the project you are.
Yeah, cool. Oh man, what a hard route that was. Congratulations on that one as well. That we actually may come back to that.
Thanks.
In just a bit. Yeah, I'm curious. The last thing I want to talk about here on tactics is pacing. And when I see you put together your sends, like I was rewatching Return to the Sleepwalker just prior to having this call with you, and you're just like flying through a lot of those sections compared to earlier on when you're working it and you're trying to place things exactly. But there is still an element of, with all these boulders that you're doing, needing a super high level of precision. And those two seem to be at odds. And so how do you think about pacing and just time under tension, time on the route itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally the faster you move, the less time you're on the wall, so the easier it's going to feel. Obviously, if you're having to do harder moves by going faster, that's not the case. So it becomes very climb and move specific. But ideally, you just want to, through the first couple of sessions, you're right, like I'll be a lot slower on moves and everything, but it's just learning it. And slowly, the more days I put into something, the more I try it, the faster I will try and do those moves. Because as long as you can continue to be accurate, I think it's, especially on the longer boulders, it helps a lot. For me personally, just trying to go quicker. I remember when I was especially training for the competitions in lead climbing, I used to basically have like a 3-minute timer where at the end of 3 minutes I was going to fall off. So if I went slowly, I was going to fall off low down, and if I climbed really fast, I'd fall off high up, and I'd do really well. And I trained, I remember, for like a whole like winter, trying to change that, trying to be able to rest more on the route and prolong my time. And yeah, it just didn't help at all. Like, I find still, like, if I go to the gym and I get on a hard, like if I'm in the lead gym and there's a hard route, I'll try it, and if I climb it, what feels natural, kind of slowly taking rests on good holds, I'll get to the top, but it'll be like hard, I'll be pumped. And then I've had it quite a few times where I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to try it again, like almost straight away, but just climb really quickly. And it feels kind of nowhere near as bad. And I'm like, did I just waste all that time training? Like, for me, it just doesn't work like that. Whereas obviously there's other climbers that are complete endurance warriors, and that's just the best way for them to climb. But yeah, I think if I can move efficiently quickly, then that's always going to be the best way. So that's what I try and aim for. It just will take quite a few sessions to actually learn the moves enough to do that. Spots of time is one of the boulders which that definitely did not work with at all. The moves are so easy to like hit the hold slightly wrong, and then that you just can't use them. That it had to be very in control, very precise, and doing the moves as like slowly as I could for that to work.
Yeah, very, very project dependent. It does, like, as you watch your different cutting edge climbs, you can see the difference in pacing. But I think such an interesting point that you make there about like the 3-minute exercise. I'm going to try that. Like, I think it could be interesting for those who are listening. Like, it's a fun experiment to go out and find something that's pretty hard at the gym. It could be a boulder, it could be a route climb, and like try it where you're recovering or taking your time or trying to make every move perfect, and then try it where you just essentially try to sprint and just see how it feels different. I'm assuming accuracy goes down with the speed, but you know, when you look at the best climbers, you look at Adam Ondra, for example, the dude climbs really fast, you know? There's something to it. Yeah, there's something about reducing that time, to your point, reducing that time on the wall, even if it might increase your risk of falling early on because you just blow a move, it may ensure success or a high point later on if you don't blow the move. Whereas if you climb slow, you might be just guaranteeing that you're not going to get as high as you could.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I mean, that's something that Adam's really good for, and I think learned a bit from him, is that you just have to trust the technique and trust it's going to work. You may, as you say, your foot might slip, or you might miss a hold, you might fall off, but it also allows you to just, if it allows it to feel easier and give you a better shot of actually doing the route, if it all comes together, then that's got to be the way you got to climb it. There's no point making it more secure, but then getting pumped out and falling on the last clip every time, where you could just gamble a bit more, I suppose, on that you might get a bit luckier or unlucky, but you'll probably do it faster because you then have enough in the tank. Yeah, definitely the way to climb, I think.
I love it, dude. Well, thanks for that. Into the tactics. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just one thing on that is what can be really frustrating is if you find like a sort of not quite bomber knee bar or something, and you're just like fully rest, or like heel hook, and you're fully just using it as a rest, and then you slip out on like an easier part of the climb because you're just trying to rest really hard, and then you're like, oh, that was a really silly way to fall off. But then again, like, if you didn't slip and you get that rest, it's gonna just help so much that you have to try.
Did that ever happen to you? You ever blow a climb like just chilling?
Yeah, definitely. It was first ascent I did this year at Dumbarton, Harambe, and there's a no hands knee bar in it, but it's weirdly slippy for how good it is. And yeah, I fell out the knee for sure at least once or twice.
Oh, brutal. Well, it's a real skill. I mean, knee barring is a real skill. Speaking of Adam Ondra, I mean, I don't know if there's anybody better than that guy when it comes to that, but it can be oddly, for me at least, where I don't use them as much. Although there's quite a bit of knee bars. I climb at the Red River Gorge predominantly, and there's quite a bit of knee bars, but for me, they like exhaust my calves and my thighs so much that like I might be resting my fingers, but then I pull onto the route and I'm like, holy shit, I'm gassed. Like, I don't know if I got anything back there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I basically try and avoid them at all costs, or at least wearing a knee pad. The knee bars, not so much, but I really don't get on with knee pads. I find they kind of like they just feel like they constrict my leg. So yeah, I try not to use them unless it's like very, very clear that it'll make a big difference on the climb, and I'm like, okay, right, I need to just mission for it. But yeah,
well, you know,
no, I know what you mean.
Who said that for a long time is Alex Magos, and then all of a sudden he straps on a couple knee pads and sends change and move out in Flatinger. And I don't know, dude, like, any thoughts, any interest and excitement on tossing on some rubber and giving those things a go?
That sounds so weird. Yeah, I'm meant to go this year. I kind of wanted to go last year. I've always meant to go to Flatinger. I'm definitely going to go next year though. So yeah, very keen to go check them out. I've always kind of been put off because of the fact that everything just seems to be knee bars the entire way up, and all the routes seem really long, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get really pumped. But from the people I've chatted to, it seems like it does sound like, because of the knee bars, essentially you're just doing boulder problems between rests on a lot of the routes. So yeah, very excited to go out. I really want to check out Silence. Just seems completely ridiculous. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that'd be a lot of fun to go try out there. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've learned, I do know how to knee bar, and I can do it. It's just I find it uncomfortable, so I've never been super into it. But
yeah, but I mean, you could also just skip the knee bars. I think Adam, at least when Adam put up Move,
yeah,
he didn't use any knee bars, I don't think.
Yes, at least for change as well. That's kind of one of the crazy things. Like his beta through the crux, I remember watching that like film when it came out. It's just so crazy and like ridiculous looking. And I have to say, with the knee pads, it doesn't get me anywhere near as psyched watching the videos now of people, which is a bit of a shame on that one. But at least for Silence, obviously Adam was using the pads, so it's not like there's some beta break through the crux of that route. So yeah, it just looks crazy hard regardless. So yeah, definitely that's the one I'm most psyched to go and look at.
Yeah, do you have, like, in your mind, in your style, in terms of when you're looking at projects, do you try to emulate the manner in which the first Ascensionist did it, just in terms of like the gear? So knee pads are the obvious example there.
Yes, I'd say so. For like, it depends on the climb. For instance, like, one thing that I've chatted about in the past, I guess, is like Hubble at Ravenstor, which is obviously super historic.
Yeah, Ben Moon.
It's it's
likely or possibly the first 9A, depending on who you ask in the world.
Yeah, like for me, that, I mean, I did that before knee pads kind of got popular, I suppose. But so I think Sean McCall had been on it in the past with knee pads, so it was like a known thing that there were knee bars that kind of don't completely break it, but like definitely help the crux a lot. And yeah, for that route, just because it's so historic and the crag it's at isn't exactly amazing, you know, like you wouldn't go there because you're thinking, oh yeah, let's go there, like the routes are, it's like Seus. That's not the case. If you're going there to try that route, you're kind of going for the history. So for me personally, it kind of makes sense, but it really would depend on the climb. And like, if it's like, I suppose, got historical meaning almost to me in a way, but I think it doesn't really matter in like a sort of broader sense of ethics or anything. Climbing's very personal, and it's whatever you want to do that makes you happy, just as long as you're obviously honest about what you've done. Like, it doesn't really matter. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, Silence is, to your point, Adam obviously used the knee pad and the bar, and it was quite critical, but there are different ways to slice it. And we've seen Stefano out there, who seems really close on that route, although he hasn't quite done it, and I think the season's wrapped up now, but no doubt he'll be back. But he's doing it slightly different. He's kind of popping out onto these crimps after like the upside down like foot jam, and obviously you haven't really spent any time on it, but do you get a sense for like the style of the route that you would, of the climb, on how you would break down Silence? And as somebody who trained quite successfully on replicas, would there be an idea of trying to create that sequence, you know, over in Sheffield before heading up to Flatinger?
I mean, did Pete Whitaker and Stefano, they set a Silence replica
That's right.
at the Lattice headcourses a while back, and I remember trying that, and I think it's one of those routes that's probably really, really, really hard to replicate because of the crack feature. I feel like it would be, like, for me personally, I think I want to just go check it out and see if it's even vaguely possible in the long term. If it is, I think I for sure would try and set replicas, but I think time on that route and just learning it because it looks so technical would be the most important thing. It's kind of thing with spots of time, which is why one of the reasons I didn't set a replica was because although it's kind of board style, a bit like Burden, because it's so technical and it's so crucial to do the moves correctly, that if your replica, the holds were slightly off, I think it would actually arguably be detrimental to your attempts because you'd just start hitting the holds and the real thing slightly wrong. And I feel like silence might be quite similar with that, but I would need to do, I imagine, a lot of endurance training if I wanted to get close on silence.
Let's talk about mental game and mindset. And God, you've just taken on some of like the hardest things in the absolute world. Talking about whether it's, some of the sport climbs that you've done or the boulders that you've done. Let's explore struggle first. And is there any area in mindset and in the mental game that you've struggled with?
I think not so much in the outdoors, maybe a bit more in the competition side of climbing. But with the outdoor climbing, I'm just so psyched for kind of everything that I end up trying or looking at that. I don't know. I want to climb. I want to climb the boulders. I want to climb the lines. So I obviously there is fear when you're going to try something, especially if it's like you've planned a trip and it's far away and expensive and taking a lot of time, and you're like, oh, I really hope I don't get there and then can't do like any of the moves or something. But I'm kind of hopeful that there's always going to be like the boulders are always going to be there and there's always going to be another chance to go back. So in general, I think I'm just mostly psyched by stuff. I'm not so worried about whether it's going to go wrong or
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you are really psyched and seemingly like very, very positive and really just enjoy the process. And I'm curious if you feel some of that comes from it being outdoor climbing being such a different vibe than the pressure cooker of comp climbing where you did spend so much time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. They're completely different, I think. I mean, now, especially with the setting, they're basically different sports, I think, a lot of the time, like the indoor boulder compared to the outdoors. But yeah, it's just a completely different environment. And I think also knowing that like the goal with outside is always to, or like I guess the goal of climbing is to get to the top. In competitions, it's not necessarily the case. It's about obviously being like on the lead wall. You could win a World Cup by getting, 4 quick draws from the top or something like that. I remember the first finals I made, I got halfway up the route. I couldn't believe I'd got through to the finals. It was crazy. Whereas if outdoors, I think it suits my mindset a lot better where it's this sort of completion goal where, the end goal is the top of the climb. And it's like everything leads to that. So anything you do under is just progress towards that goal, which is kind of what we were chatting about earlier. And I think that always, from a mental point of view, just keeps me pretty psyched and like focused on it.
Are there mental habits that you have? Is there a mental hygiene or tricks that you use, whether you're copping a rest on a sport climb or you're about to pull onto a really hard boulder? Is there anything that you do to get yourself ready to perform, ready to try hard?
Like a sort of like ritual almost or something.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, superstitions or rituals or, breathing. Like, what do you do before you're about to pull on?
I'm actually not sure if I've got something that I do every time. I probably do. Probably excessively chalk up and look at my skin or something. But no, I don't think there's something I do every time. I like mentally it'll probably just be like going through the moves in my head. Like I'll probably go bottom to top in my head at least once before I pull on in that like run up to pulling on. So whether that's like when I'm tying in on a sport route or like just sitting on the mats resting on a boulder or something. But other than that, yeah, just thinking about the climb. I don't know, there's not much else. Just I get super obsessed, I think. So this is the thing, it's more like even when I'm at home trying to go to sleep, I'll be like, oh, like I'll go through the moves one time and then I'll be going through the moves in my head and I'll kind of be getting psyched because I'm thinking about the climb, and then I'll be more awake because I'm like getting psyched, and then that doesn't help me sleep, so then I go through the climb about 20 more times, and then I don't know, I don't think there's like rituals at the bottom though.
I feel like it's one of the joys of climbing and projecting is the like nighttime head on the pillow mental send of the project. I love it, dude. Every single night right now I'm projecting something hard, and like one of the things I'm so excited. I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, oh, in a couple minutes I get to lay down and I get to go through this project. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And then I think what's always the worst is when you're like thinking about it and you're like, oh yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna like smash this move or this link or something, and then you get there and you're like, oh no, it's really hard still. Like, oh,
right.
That's bad.
It was so much easier when I was laying on my pillow.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for the peek inside that routine. I mean, Will Bosi, you're a simple man, dude. You crush some pancakes on the gas station on the way in, and then you just pull on and send the rig. Maybe we're just overthinking all this shit. Maybe you're going to put me out of a job. I don't like, you just show up and climb the thing, guys. That's the beta.
I mean, I still rate the sweet potato when I'm projecting. I eat a lot of sweet potato because it was back in Finland when I was trying bird, and it was like kind of when Chat GPT sort of had come out and was super big, and we like put in like, what's the best way to regrow skin, and it was like listing the best foods to eat, and it was listed off a bunch, and one of them was sweet potato. So I always eat tons of sweet potato when I'm projecting. There's, I suppose, a bit of insight.
I love it. No, see, that's great. There's good. That's a Will's whisper right there. Sweet potato for the skin. Now, speaking of skin, you created your own chalk, right? You've got your own chalk that you developed. So I want to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, Bosi Blizzard. Super excited with that. Basically, as I was complaining about earlier, I'd probably have too much. My skin I've got very like wet, sweaty skin that's very soft. So yeah, I struggle when the conditions aren't great, and for me that's either like under 10 degrees Celsius with strong wind or under 5 degrees with like a light breeze or something.
Cold.
So most of the year in most places conditions are pretty bad for me. And yeah, I just always found with chalks that I would just sweat through them really quickly. So I spent quite a lot of time over the last year basically testing, playing with different sort of formulas and stuff, and yeah, got my own chalk now, which I'm very excited with, which I am selling, but it may not look that way because it's just like in my flat currently in Sheffield. So yeah, when I'm there, I can ship it out and send it to people. But yeah, it's, I guess, not in stock when I'm not there. But it means that I've got like a supply of chalk now, which I really like and I think helps me a lot. So yeah, if you've got sweaty skin, it'd be great to check it out. It sometimes ships between, it's like UK, sometimes America and South Korea, but other than that I've not managed to work anything out for like Europe or that yet.
So if somebody manages to get it's in stock and they get a bag, is Will Bosi packing the Bosi Blizzard into a box and sending it out to them?
If you're in the UK, yes. For America and South Korea, it will be someone else, but
okay, so I got to travel to the UK to get a hand-packed Will Bosi bag of Bosi Blizzard. Oh, man. It's almost worth the trip right there, dude.
I don't know about that, but maybe.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations on the climbing that you're doing, but also just like for sharing it. You're very open with your process. You're very positive, and like the stoke is real. And not just myself, I can speak for, I think, everybody who's watching and listening. Like you bring a lot to the climbing community with your process, and your accomplishments are really impressive and motivating.
Thank
you.
Like
the whole package, man. It's really fun to watch you.
Oh, thanks so much, and thanks for having me on. It's been great to chat.
Oh man, what a guy. I love this conversation with Will frickin' Bosi, as he was just like hanging out, talking about eating pancakes at a gas station and then ripping the hardest moves on earth. He's such a nice guy. I hope that came through in the interview, and he and I talked a little bit, outside of when we were recording, and he's just like such a genuinely nice and psyched guy. I'm so happy for him, for how his career's going. The dude works hard, and he's just accomplishing at the highest levels. Will, congratulations. Thank you so much. Man, what an insightful conversation. And let me tell you, this conversation continued for like another, 30, 40 minutes or something like that for a bonus episode where we have questions from patrons and Apple subscribers, and then also hit on some really hot topics that I think you are going to want to listen to. So let me just click off a little bit of what we touched on here in this bonus episode with Will. Well, first of all, Will talked about what he feels is the difference between V17 and this theoretical next grade V18, which of course doesn't exist, but he talks about how he might have pulled onto what could be a V18 and really where he sees that distinction and kind of the gray area that he feels we're in right now between even V16 and V17. A very thoughtful exploration of grades there. And speaking of grades, Will ranks his V17s, the 4 that he's done, from hardest to easiest. And again, I'll put easiest in quotes there because we're talking about the hardest boulders in the world here. But it was really interesting to hear how he broke down Alphane, Burden of Dreams, Spots of Time, and Return to the Sleepwalker, and where those fell in his mind in terms of their level of difficulty within that grade, the hardest bouldering grade on Earth right now. He also talked about downgrading. God, I guess we kind of went down a rabbit hole on grading. I mean, is there anything that climbers love to just wax about for hours on end around a campfire or a beer or at the crag than grades? So I guess it's not a surprise that we kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but his thoughts on downgrading were quite refreshing. Or, just this idea here where maybe a boulder's been established for a while, it's got a grade of V16, and then somebody goes and does it and proposes V15, and all of a sudden now we're talking about it being a V15. Will had a take on that. I don't know if it's a hot take, but he had a very specific take on downgrading as well as upgrading that I think is quite fascinating. And then, we talk about a lot of things and he answers questions and that, but here's another one that I think is just worth the price of admission right now, which by the way is totally free. Even like you can just get like a trial if you just want to listen to this episode, but I'd love your support. But anyway, if you join as a Patreon member or an Apple subscriber, you'll access this and you can get a free trial. I digress. He talks about Adam Ondra's boulder, Terra Nova. Terra Nova, if the name rings a bell, is a boulder that, I think Adam Ondra put this up like 10 years ago. And it was before Nale put up Burden of Dreams. And Adam gave it V16, but it has 0 repeats. And Will has put a load of days on it. And we'll get Will's thoughts on whether he thinks that in fact might have been the world's first V17 by Mr. Adam Ondra. Such a fascinating look into the world of elite climbing. You can get instant access to all of that right now at 0 cost, actually, with a free trial over at patreon.com/The Struggle Climbing Show, or right there in your Apple Podcast player if you are an iPhone person. And you're also going to get instant access to more than 60 hours of other bonus content featuring the best of the best. Adam Ondra, Chris Sharma, Nina Williams, Alex Honnold, and so many more athletes and coaches that have been on the show here. Plus, pro clinics on stronger fingers with Dr. Tyler Nelson, advanced bouldering with Allison Vest, moonboard with Ravioli Biceps, performance hacks with Hazel Finley, and so many more. It's all there for just a few bucks a month, or actually 0 cost right now with that free trial, so you can try it before you buy it. Although, honestly, your support as patrons and subscribers is really what helps to keep this thing going. So if you got a few bucks, I certainly would appreciate your help as I'm jamming away here in the podcast/utility closet. Thank you. I love you. Big thanks and appreciation to all of our show sponsors who have brought you this episode here at 0 cost. Way to go. You can check your show notes for links and special discounts from those guys that are only available to Struggle listeners, and there's some great discounts there, so check them all out. Actually, you can see all of the show's brand sponsors and special deals by popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? Well, you do now, and it feels pretty good for me to write that check every month. They're doing such amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. Y'all can get inspired and learn more about their amazing work over at honnoldfoundation.org, and toss them some love if you can. They're doing awesome stuff. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. The show is produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by the wonderful Glenn Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. If you want to do something that helps me out for 0 cost, you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, or just share this with one of your climbing friends or the gym that you climb at. It really helps to get the word out there. I appreciate it. I hope your training and climbing are going great, and if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.